Hi, and welcome to English 1, Chapter 1. In this chapter, we're going to look at communication as a whole. You will see that in the chapter there is exercises that you have to do and submit before next class, and that's the homework for each and every one class. And there might be extra exercises, but for now, that's what we're going to do for Chapter 1. So yes, most of the course will be done from a video, YouTube videos that you have to follow. Yes, we will meet and talk in class on Zoom, but most of the course will be done from YouTube videos. So you need to pay attention to what I post and to do the exercises in all. So you will be not necessarily graded on the exercise. We will review most of them, but you will have to certainly hand them in on time. So here we go. So this chapter is all about communication and the exchange of information. And the way we exchange information, there are three types: oral, written, and non-verbal communication. In the world we're living right now, it'd be very difficult for us to really express our non-verbal communication, but we will be expressing our communication in this class orally and also by writing it down in the exercises that I will give you. So why do we communicate? Well, we communicate to inquire, to find out, to inform, to persuade possibly, and also to develop goodwill between two people or more. And there are certain components when it comes to the way we communicate. Initially, we send a message, then we send the actual message, we transmit the message, and the receiver gets the message, interprets the message, and then there's feedback. Here is an example. Right, so here we go. He is a sender, and that will be the message. And the message is, here's my grandson's first steps. So message transmission will go over to the receiver, and the receiver gets the message, and he's interpreting this by looking at the picture and will now say, nice, Bob, but when will you show me your plan? That would be feedback. So there you go. That's how it works. These are all the components when it comes to communicating, right? And then there's feedback also on his part. Oh, sure, let me open the file. Okay, so here it is again, same thing. Feedback, the actual message interpretation, you have it all there, message sent, and then there's feedback back and forth in how we interpret the actual message. Okay, now in communication, is always barriers that stop us from communicating properly, and some of them are language. Sometimes when we don't have full control over a certain language, be it French, English, or any other language. Also skills, or some lacking in skills when it comes to that. We don't know how to say things or how to interpret. And listening level, and also speaking properly, grammar, and our behavior. Now our behavior, that's where the nonverbals come into play. Okay, so here's the first exercise. You can take down your exercise, and you can do the exercises with the YouTube video as you go along, very simply, and you'll have pretty much what to do. So a listening questionnaire, just fill this in. So when listening to another person, so this is not really a hard exercise, certainly. So when listening to another person, do you get distracted? Always, usually, often, rarely, or never. So, you know, just be honest with yourself. It's only for yourself. No one's going to be watching or listening to what you're going to interpret here. We can discuss it in the next class. So just fill this in, and best of your knowledge. You could pause the screen here, certainly, because this will take you a lot longer to do than that. So just pause right here and do this. And again, you can just you can type everything down if you want. I did not put that in the exercise, but put as much information as you can in your exercise, so you can, the exercise, why I did not put a lot of this information for you to do is because I want you to communicate with me. So I want you to write it down so I'll understand what you're writing down. Okay, so do your best with that. And afterwards, give yourself, when you have interpreted and added up all the points, give yourself a score. Did you get a perfect score? And you might even want to rate someone else. If you're with someone or nearby, please be safe. Respect social distancing, that's for sure. Our world has completely changed for that matter. So do rate someone, but from a social distance, or 2 meters as we say. All right, so good or excellent communication skills, right? What are they? Well, skills could be from listening, certainly, and active listening is important. Speaking is a skill. Reading is certainly a skill. And writing, without a doubt, is a skill. So these are skills that sometimes when we lack one or two, our communication skills will suffer. Okay, so let's continue. So the questions that you have to ask yourself are, what are the barriers when it comes to the 4 skills that we have to communicate? And what is the role of feedback? In other words, how do we answer or how we interpret the message? Okay. Again, if you have any questions, you could also write down your questions in your exercise. The exercise sheet that you have there really is for you to fill in as much as possible with all the exercises and questions as we go along. So here's another exercise, and let's see if you can interpret what I write down, and you can just give me your feedback. So if I would say, I would like you to explain the following. So explain listening to a neighbor's complaints about a barking dog. So in 1 or 2 sentences, write down what does that mean to you? Listening to a neighbor's complaints about a barking dog. Also explain speaking to a group about the advantages of updating software. So what does that mean to you? So I'll give you a couple more. Writing an essay about the Montreal metro system. Right? So explain what that is. And also explain reading several reviews on the latest smartphone. So write down what that means, or explain that to someone what that means. Okay? So you can pause the screen, and you certainly have all week to do this in class today and before it's due next class. All right, so please pause, because the next one will be another exercise. Here, I want you to edit. I want you to change the sentences. So the first one, the rest of you order is back ordered and should be here in 7 days. So I want you to edit it, change it, correct it, interpret it in your best way possible. Number 2, although John mailed the package last week, Alice has not received it yet. So look at that one too. Number 3, you're late and so is your plane. And number 4, Paul finally wrapped up her project. So please edit these questions, edit these sentences, and write them down edited in your exercise page. All right, so again, do pause at this stage. So let's keep going. So now in communication there's flows, and this is the way there's a flow of communication. It could flow upward, it could flow downward, and it can flow laterally. This means that in business especially, communication does flow in this direction, upward, downward, or laterally. So again, this is a business English class, and everything that we're going to talk about will be relevant to business, communicating in business, as the title of the book stipulates. So in business, there are different types of flows of communication, and here they are. Right? Management, it would be lateral, and as you can see, supervisors downward, and also employees could be downwards, laterally, and upwards. Okay, so supervisors can communicate up and down and also laterally. Okay. There's also two types of communication, internally and externally. When you are in business, when you communicate with people that work inside your office, that is internal communication. When you communicate with people outside your office space, or people that are not employed at the same company as you, this is external. And certainly when you talk to someone internally or externally, the language in most cases is different and certainly not at the same level. So you have to interpret that, how you talk to people that you work with and how you talk to people that are outside the company but you still do business with. So let's say you're in sales, right? If you would talk to your sales clerks or your purchasing or your production plant, it would be internally. And then when you talk to your customers and how you talk to them formally, or is more formal, or then you would have to talk with internal. So that will be external. All right, so this is a good question right here that you need to know, possibly for later exercises or exams. There are 6 C's: clarity, completion, concise, consistent, correct, and courteous. So you would follow these 6 C's when it comes to communication, and you'll be in the right path on what communication should look like. Right? Now, there's also interpersonal skills that we're going to look at, and this is human relations. So what are interpersonal skills? You attitude, that means how you see yourself, big or small. Positive attitude, how you listen, if you listen well. Discretion, when not to say things, and also consideration or empathy to talk to people. So interpersonal skills, you have all 5. So you have to question yourself, right? Is it upward communication different when you talk about interpersonal skills? You talk to your boss differently, let's say, than to your worker? I would think so. And also, if you would talk to someone that's inside your company and outside your company, your interpersonal skills will certainly vary, or your interpersonal communication will certainly vary here when you do that. Okay, so another exercise coming up. Again, this is written. I'd like you to write a paragraph on anything of the next 3 subjects. You can write a paragraph on applying for a job. You can write a paragraph on voicemail reception, and you can also write a paragraph on how you prepare a research paper. Now I know you're going to ask me, so what do I do here? I'm not sure. Well, just interpret exactly what I'm giving you and communicating to you right now. I just would like you to write a paragraph about when you apply for jobs. Just about anything that you'd like to write about job application, or not all 3, one of the 3, or a voicemail reception or that you received recently. You can write about that, how you receive voicemails, and also, or I should say, how you would prepare a research paper. So a research paper could be on anything. So just write a paragraph on how you interpret what I have written there. So you can pause the screen or pause the tape or video, I should say, right here. Okay, so I'll keep going after you've paused. So inappropriate communication, certainly from the top to the bottom in a company, how employees would speak directly to managers and how they would speak, or managers would speak directly to employees. There could be certain issues when it comes to that, and there's certain violations that would come into play. So there are 6 C's violations. So we remember the 6 C's. Do you know them by heart? All you gotta do is go back and you can get them. So there's 6 C's violation. We would like to take this opportunity to welcome all retirees. We demand that you make a payment now. Who would you speak that to? So we would like to take this opportunity to welcome all retirees. What kind of communication is that? Is that clear? We demand that you make a payment now. Is this violating the 6 C's or not? Here's another one. So if you go back and look at the 6 C's, are these sentences violating the 6 C's? This is something that maybe I did not add in your exercise book, but you in your exercise page, but you can add this. So the pictures will be sent separately. Is that clear? Is that following the 6 C's? So please do go back to the 6 C's to look at that. The manager told the employee that he would not attend meeting. Again, same thing, interpretation. And the last one, the prices will be 2, 6, and 4. So if you read that, does it violate the 6 C's? Okay. So do pause the screen here. There will be a lot of these little exercises right through the chapter. So we're more than halfway there, so let's keep going. So in communication, there's also ethics, the principles of communicating, the right and wrong of what to say, not to say, how you say things, certainly plays a big part in communication. So if we look at the acceptable business communication, A, B, C, do you remember that? Possibly there might be a question somewhere along the way about what that is. So if I would ask you, what is honesty and fairness? Well, that is an acceptable business communication. So honesty and fairness is acceptable. Facts instead of opinions is acceptable. Opinions instead of facts is not acceptable. Confidentiality is acceptable, and accurate details is acceptable. So that's the important part of acceptable business communication. This is the way we should always communicate, internally or externally. And in communication, there is a lot of discrimination and bias, B-I-A-S, when it comes to communicating. Language is a big issue. There's biased statements, and the bias means that you have interpreted something in the past and you discriminately use that information that you have in the past today, even if it's not even a factual one. So you have to be very careful with that, because a lot of people do that, is that they base their statements on something they knew. So in other words, something that they assumed in the past was true, but it's not necessarily true now in the future. There's also passive aggressiveness when it comes to discriminating and ghosting. So passive aggressiveness is exactly what it means: being aggressive without showing it, and that is even more dangerous than actually showing your aggressivity towards somebody else, or your aggression, I should say, towards somebody else. And ghosting is really something that is new in our language and communicating, and also in business and also in offices. Ghosting is done by a lot of people mostly by social media, where they all of a sudden don't answer emails, or they just disappear, and they act like the person is a ghost. And that's exactly why it's called ghosting. So we talked about bias. There's also gender bias, gender specific, and there's gender neutral. So gender specific is what we're used to, and gender neutral is what the world is fighting for to change to. So businesswoman should be business person, and chairman should be chairperson. And you can see that women and men should not be specific. It should be neutral. Fireman could be firefighter, so on and so forth. All the way down to weatherman should be weather reporter. Okay, so inclusive language that you can use, right, are beliefs, values, attitudes, physical language, and also bias-free language. So all these you can find in the actual chapter. If you want more information, I'm posting this chapter, which is a PDF, but you also have the PDF chapter with all the detailed information if you want to get more information on this, or you can write down a question and I will try to answer it for you. So in terms of skills, no assumptions, and preferred terminology, this is a big thing when it comes to communication, right? Our skills, when we talk about our skills and how we listen and how we write and how we should not have any assumptions. This is no bias when we actually listen to somebody talking, and also how we look at the words that we've always used in the past. So preferred terminology. When you have preferred terminology in a workspace, especially, you need to understand what that means, is because when you do have words that are being interpreted meaning certain things, that is like office lingo that you can use that everybody understands really quickly. So I can just give you an example. I used to work for one company, and they used to mention that one product was called an RSB. And when I changed and worked for somebody else, that same product became RSC. So if in my new establishment I would start calling that product RSB, like where I used to work, people will not understand. And actually, I think I did. And some people turned around and said, what's an RSB? So that is really what it's called when it comes to preferred terminology. There's also stereotyping, right? Conception versus misconception. What is true and what is false based upon biased stereotype of people, be it backgrounds, what they're wearing, and experience, gender. Also, all this is all about stereotyping. So here I'll give you an idea more about what stereotyping looks like, right? You can read them down the list, all the way down to a lawyer, which in most cases are not, is looked upon as being a liar, as they say, lawyer, liar, or someone that is not trustworthy. Okay, so those are the individuals, and that's how they are stereotyped in society and the norms. Well, let's continue. And then there's also, when it comes to communication, ethnocentrism. This is the ethnic group or culture is always superior. So us, we are all in different ethnic groups. And if you are ethnocentric, that means you think your culture is superior to the rest. This is certainly not something that you should feel, but unfortunately there's a lot of people that do feel this way, that their culture is superior than others. This is called ethnocentrism. There's always prejudice, right? Negative conclusions is prejudice. When you reach a conclusion that someone is somehow, some way, then you decided that. So you have certainly a prejudice statement on that. When it comes out to when you figured out that it's not true, then you have possibly a conflict of negative conclusions, where at the beginning you thought the person was one way, and then finally you figured out what the person was like, but sometimes you don't feel like you should go back to show them that you're wrong. So certainly there's a negative conclusion. Let's keep going. And there's also, in communication, there's always discriminatory actions. I'm not going to go in details about that, but you could just imagine what that means, how you make signs with your hands, or the way you look at people with contempt. This certainly would offend a lot of people. This is nonverbal, right? So here maybe you can answer these 3 questions. Again, here I did not put this in the exercise. This is an optional, but you can answer these 3 questions if you like. Just give me your information, give me your thought on how are ethics incorporated into business communication. You can answer that question. Or how can you avoid discrimination in writing when you write something down? And number 3, what are gender biased words? Give me some examples. All you got to do is go back, and you could easily find the answers in what we just went through. So you can pause the screen here. Again, this exercise is optional. So once you have done this, the next one is following. This one is not optional. I want you to do this. I want you to rewrite these 7 sentences. The first one, the old mailman was very dependable. So I would like you to rewrite that sentence, making it more concise, right? Make it clear. All the way down to number 7, and I want you to also to make it certainly that is not gender biased and is not stereotyped. So I'd like you to rewrite them and not make them stereotyped, and also clear. So all the way down to number 7, his Chinese father was a great opera singer. So do pause the screen here and take your time to rewrite these sentences so they are not biased or prejudiced or stereotyped. Now here's a fun act. So once you've done that, you can go to the next slide. And here, I want you to read this little paragraph, and I want you to figure out what should Denise do. So here we go. Denise's family comes from Newfoundland. That is a province here in Canada. Denise likes her job at a renowned accounting firm in Toronto, but sometimes overhears jokes about people from Newfoundland. Although the jokes are not directed at her, Denise is offended by them and is hesitant to mention her background to her colleagues, that she is also from Newfoundland. So it's the same thing now. You can change that Newfoundland to something else, your own background, your own ethnicity if you like. Excuse me. And then you can answer the question. In this case, she's at work and she hears these jokes. What do you think Denise should do? So just write down a couple of sentences on what you think Denise should do. Please pause at this stage. Again, you can pause and go back to it later on. This is the advantage of having this on video. Okay, so once you finish that, there's another one that follows, and this one is spell check. So here are 5 sentences that have certainly some spelling mistakes in them. What I'd like you to do, is to rewrite these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences. So do pause the screen here, and you can do this taking your time. Please do rewrite it and correct the sentences. So once you've done that, please go forward, and now I want you to discuss this. So withholding information cannot be classified as unethical communication because no communication has taken place. So certainly we cannot discuss this in a group, in a class setting. This question usually is done in a class setting. So instead of doing that, you can do this on your own, and you can just give me some information of what do you think withholding information cannot be classified as unethical communication because no communication has taken place. So in other words, if someone doesn't say anything in a certain situation, is holding information but does not say it, are they a liar? Are they not liars? Are they ethical or not ethical? So just write down what you think. Okay, so let's keep going. So we can take a look at global communication technology, and we can take a look and see what are the pros and cons. So let's take a look at global communication, especially with our world that we're living with now. There's all kinds of issues, but with technology, we know exactly what's going on around the globe, right? So pros and cons, what do you think are the pros and cons? Time and speed, is that a pro, or is that something that is negative for when it comes to global communication? The quality of communication certainly has improved enormously. Confidentiality is a pro or a con. Personalization, making things for one person, right? Also hard copy availability. Nowadays in global communication, certainly there is nothing available anymore. And so do we see it that way? And also message complexity. In other words, if the message is not following the 6 C's, is that message complexity A big issue, especially in our world where there's different languages all around the world. Yes, English is the language, we would say a global language, but there's always issues of this. So what are the pros and cons? In the world, like I mentioned, we do have cross-cultural communication. We have communication that is domestic, which is local, and also international. So communication cross-culturally plays a big part in many different ways. What comes into play are the following also. Is time zones. In other words, we don't always all wake up and go to bed at the same time. We don't work at the same times either. Certain countries have holidays and some countries don't. So that is an issue too. Language, goes without saying, is an issue. Business etiquette, where in certain countries certain etiquette is respected or followed while other countries are not. And last one is also how we measure and our currency. So measurement certainly if it's in kilos and pounds, or in currency if it's in dollars or yens, let's say. So that's a big issue. So here you can just take a look at, I put a provincial statutory holiday list, and you can see just by the provinces that it's already a big issue. Just here in Canada, domestically, you can see that there are issues with different holidays when it comes to communicating too. And across the world too, there's all kinds of other communications or other kinds of holidays. So this could cause issues when you are in business, certainly dealing with these countries. You have to know about these other countries if they have certain holidays or not. Right, so cross-cultural communication occurs in both domestic and international business communication. Now this is an optional exercise, but now I want to turn it into a other exercise that I'd like you to do. So based upon what we just said now, or what you just learned, I want you to write a paragraph explaining cross-cultural communication. Okay, so, and we're almost done. Actually, we are done. And also for next week, I would like you to refer to pages 33 and 34. There are chapter 1 case 1.1 and case 1.2, and I would like you to follow the instructions and do that for the next class. So you do have a lot of work to do. You can do it in class now. Our classes are usually from 1 to 5:30, so your work should be done now. Excuse me, but this last exercise, most exercises too, you do have time to do it from now till next class. At the same time, again, I repeat, please write down any questions that you have and we could interpret them, and during Zoom in the next class we can discuss them. Okay, that's about it, and we'll see you in the next chapter.